Good morning. This is Workshop 5.1, Sacred Pathways, Chapter 1. Very interesting read. Opened my eyes to a lot of things that I had been thinking about as far as different forms of worship and how to engage all of the different members of the church, understanding that different people's personalities, different personalities, extroverts versus introverts, and this the spiritual temperaments, all of this playing in together. One thing that I remember when I first got into ministry, I thought that everything had to be contemporary. That we had to, get into this new form of worship for church to work. And my eyes were opened when I went to a church and visited a church down at Myrtle Beach near the pavilion. And it was a Methodist church. I went, everybody was dressed to a T, suits and ties. And the church probably, I would say at least 600 people, 500 to 600 people in this church. And the church was packed out. Well, the church was very ritualistic, very traditional. They did all hymns. It was almost like stepping back into time. Even though I've went to traditional churches, this church was completely traditional, but the church felt like they were being successful. And there was a lot of kids, a lot of young people. So it opened my eyes to understand that different churches have different cultures, different things work in different churches, and we as pastors have to figure out what works for our church and what we can do, trying different things to figure out what works and what doesn't work. And then have you found yourself comparing your spiritual pathway to someone else's? I have done that. I think that I see some people and they just seem to be so spiritual. They seem to be so engaged with God. They seem to be so close with God. And I long for that. I want to become closer to God. I want to be that person that people think in that same way are just really close with God. I want my congregation, I want other people to see God in me. So when I look at some of these people and try to understand what it is that they have with God that maybe I don't, looking at these different spiritual temperaments kind of helped me to understand that we are all different, and the way we worship and the way we interact with God is different. Not one way is any better than another way, but it is important that we find some way to interact with God and to grow closer with God. And looking through the pathways, really, I see myself in all of these in some way, some a little more than others. Naturalist, I love being outdoors. I love to see God's creation. I love worshiping in the woods, and praying and being in the mountains or at the beach. The sensates, I think that's the way you say it, loving God through the senses. I love the music. I love music, the smell of incense, looking at certain paintings. I feel drawn to God through those paintings. Traditionalist, loving God through ritual and symbol. I love the old hymns. I love a lot of the rituals that we used to do and still do, the sacraments. I truly love baptism. I love being a part of baptism. I love when we do communion at church. I truly feel a connection with God. Aesthetics, loving God in solitude and simplicity. I love to be alone with God. I love to spend time in the mornings with God and quiet and try to hear him speak. I love to spend time alone and just be quiet and listen to what God has to say. So I love those times. Activists, loving God through confrontation. I truly feel like I need to improve in this area of worship. I need, especially when it comes to things like abortion, that I feel very, very strongly about. I want to feel, I want to understand a way that I can be an activist in the right way when it comes to issues like this. And I love to preach to people. I feel closer to God while I'm preaching a lot of times, and when the Holy Spirit really jumps in, and I don't even know what I'm saying a lot of times, I feel closer to the Lord. And those times are just awesome times when God really deals with me. Caregivers, I love to, we've got a food pantry. I love being active in that. Enthusiast, loving God with mystery and celebration. I love a joyful celebration. I love getting together with my church family and in worship and corporate worship. Contemplatives, loving God through adoration. I adore God. My prayers always start out with praise and adoration and thanksgiving. And also, last but not least, intellectuals, loving God with the mind. I do feel like anything that I learn, just like this study, reading through these different temperaments and understanding how personality plays into all this has been very cool. So thank you very much. Thanks for listening. God bless you.